Hey, this is Curtis from GHL Solution. I've been working inside a high level for over 5 years, helping companies design systems that really work for their team and are easier to adopt, align with their operational needs, and just really get them to where they want to go. And so there's some footnotes. There's some ways I do that. Some are common, I'm sure, and some are maybe fall through the cracks. But I want to touch on a specific feature, the opportunities pipeline, that I think is just underappreciated and overlooked oftentimes, and just kind of dive into that. Talk about a few things that I like about utilizing that and starting builds with it and why, and then. I'll get into some other videos, diving into maybe some newer features and diving deeper into some certain rabbit holes, going down certain rabbit holes with it in future videos. But just want to take a moment here and touch on some of the things that I like about the opportunities pipeline where I think it has value. So over here, you'll see on the left side opportunities. You click into that, you'll see a pipeline. And so here's a sample one with some sample data. And some of the things I like about just this being part of my process is it forces you to think through your customer journey as a company. Even if you have it down, it's just helpful as a talking point and about figuring out where you might want to adjust or just thinking through your actual team's needs as well. So it's a great place to open up dialogue, have a visual reference while doing that process. And then, sometimes it's multiple meetings that we're talking about these ideas. So it's a great way just to kind of catch up and reorient and be efficient in our calls. And so, from a build standpoint, that communication and that spending that time really understanding the needs and the company's process, I think, is pivotal for everything that follows. And so yeah, that's one of the major reasons I start here. I think it just adds a lot of clarity and helps firm up a few things that might be unclear, even within their own company. There's often times where they're like, let me dive into that. Let's make a decision here. And so there's iterations sometimes that happen just in the very beginning that, again, just have they're great things to flesh out early. So you're not correcting tons of automations later or other things down the line that are more work intensive. So that's probably first and foremost. But overall, I just think it's a great place to dive in and get started and get on the same page. So that's one. That's kind of an obvious one, but still needs to be mentioned, I think. This is a great anchoring foundation for most automations. And so as we're thinking about how a customer is coming through or how leads coming through, or in other there's lots of different types of pipelines I'll touch on in a moment. But as they are moving through, automations can be triggered. There's triggers based off of just pipeline stages. There's many, but again, this just helps keep things organized. It helps with your folders. I like pinning folders off of this if it makes sense in a specific build, which usually it does. So again, I just feel like once you're framing this out, you're almost simultaneously framing out a lot of automations and a lot of organizations. So it just starts creating your build for you as you're getting clarity with the company you're working with or for your own team. So yeah, just very useful in that regard as well. And from a usability standpoint, pipelines, when it comes to actually using it as a team, it's just from multiple levels of the organization, you're going to be able to utilize and get value out of this one feature alone. So just from the frontline team, being in it daily, moving leads around, engaging, taking action, getting quick data, sorting and filtering based on what they need to see, customizing the fields. There's a lot of different knobs and dials that Highlevel has evolved and iterated on to make this to where the software is bending to your team's needs more than you having to bend to the software, which is common out there for a lot of SaaS. So just from the frontline staff, very usable, being able to click in, get the information you need. And again, this isn't a deep dive in all the features, just kind of a high level overview and conceptual thoughts to share. But even the middle level teams, members and managers, that want visibility and optics on being able to see how things are flowing, where there's bottlenecks, finding solutions, and identifying challenges from a more of a big picture view, and helping support their team. This is a great tool for that. So just from the front end staff to the manager standpoint, really helpful. And then tying these into dashboard metrics and for owners to kind of see outcomes and how those are taking shape, from again even a greater vantage point. So just across from a usability standpoint, it's very usable, very pretty intuitive, and again it's just very actionable. And so again, I like that the core elements of this feature from that standpoint. Be able to switch views is nice, and dive into filters, see the data you want, how you want to see it, and even managing the fields. So again, there's a lot to some of this in regards to how we customize and the thoughts behind that. But just from a high level view, this is some of the value of this feature too. Just want to touch on that. So one of the things that, as I'm building this out, that I think through is just a general vision of keeping it as simple as possible so it's usable. It's really easy to get into a million stages and have it be overwhelming, leads getting lost. So there's a balancing act to having designated stages for every sort of use case and scenario, so things are clean and organized, and having a million stages. So you want to think through that. You want to err on the side of simplicity as much as possible, and then just knowing that you can create multiple pipelines in here, and you can have them flow into each other. So if you're having a multi-stage and there's clean breakpoints, sometimes that's a nice way of going. So if you just really want to focus on your lead journey before their customer, and then a customer fulfillment or onboarding pipeline, and then maybe retention pipeline. Those are multiple ways of breaking up maybe a longer journey or process. And so it's still very easy to navigate each one, and it's really easy to kind of see where people really are, leads and customers really are. So that's just something to think about as you're building these multiple stages out. You want to think through that and make sure it's super clean and they're functional. So as you're moving through and deciding on these stages, again, we're talking about through use cases and different ways the lead or the customer will get through these different stages. Because oftentimes there'll be more than one scenario that can happen, and you just want to account for those. And so it's really easy to just want to create a stage for everything, but there are other ways of leaning into that. So using custom fields, creating those, and then using filters to access those custom fields down here, so you can filter by that is one way. Just adding tags so that you can filter off of the tags or differentiate based on that. There's also smart tags now in the pipelines. So as you have a pipeline here, so look at here, you can get into smart tags, and these are really more actionable specifically for the pipeline. Going in and you can have pre-built ones here or update tags. So utilizing some of these layers is really what you want to think through, so you're not clogging up the pipeline, keeping it as organized as possible. And so yeah, you just want to think through some of that, and so it's really optimized and works well and flows well for the team. It's really usable that way. All right, so one thing that I do is as I'm looking at these pipeline stages, I'm trying to look at them through one lens, like the customer experience lens mostly. It is possible to look at it through operational needs from an internal team standpoint, like these things need to happen in the background, so forth and so on. But I would employ you to try and use, like I talked about, to like tags or even tasks, and other features to do some of that internal work, so that you're not switching. So it gets cluttered and it gets confusing on which stages are maybe impacting the client directly or an internal note. So you just want to use each feature for what they're used for. So to me, the way I do that, I'm always just thinking through the customer lens. What's my experience? Like, what things are happening? I'm either taking doing as a customer or lead, or things I'm experiencing. So that's just kind of a tip there. I think it helps in general. Again, there's lots of different ways of approaching pipelines, a lot of different strategies. Again, I think that's more of the rule than the exception from my standpoint. So one thing to note as we're dealing with building past the pipeline and we start talking about automation is that one of the things just to acknowledge is that not everything needs to be automated. So you have things that you might want to trigger off of, and you want maybe these cards to move automatically, and that's great. But you really want to tap into the operational side of the team and say, hey, how are you guys going to use this? What are the variables? Are there too many maybe to even consider automating, where it's just diminishing returns at some point or just error prone? Some things, it's okay to embrace the manual actions and just create SOPs or standard operating procedures around those internally for the team. So oftentimes what I'll see as a blend is just talking through that and being mindful of it. And so you can create something that flows really well and you're not over automating stuff and getting into trouble. So that's just a quick note for future stuff. So not to get too deep into all the features, but I think one thing that's kind of lost or hidden, or maybe people miss a lot of times, is just being able to take these cards and manage the field. So coming over here is a sample card view. And then there's obviously some layouts here if you want to kind of keep it tight, compact view versus default. But going through here and being able to edit things and reorganize them is pretty handy. And so you're seeing exactly what you need to see, how you want to see it, as best as possible based on these options. So I think that's an underutilized feature, and just want to make sure I pointed that out here really quick. Again, there's some strategies, some different ways of setting this up I could dive into, but again, just trying to keep this video a little shorter. So one question I get is just roles and permissions as it pertains to the pipeline. So if you go into settings, my staff, you can go into your team and pick a team member, go into edit, and you can restrict data to only data that's assigned. So what that does is anytime you're a lead or a customer is assigned to that particular user or team member, they're only going to see that in the pipeline. So this is kind of where you go to edit that and turn that on and off for different team members. You can build roles around that, so it's easy to bring on and onboard new team members with presets. But I know that's a common question too, so just want to touch on that as it pertains to pipelines and what's actually visible for frontline staff, team members, when they go in and see data, they're not overwhelmed by leads that aren't theirs, etc. So oftentimes, the go-to for these pipelines is a sales process or a pipeline, going through customer journey. And again, like I was mentioning, you can break that down into onboarding, fulfillment, retention, review requests, things like that in stages. But also, a lot of people use it for hiring and internal use. So, everybody has a hiring process, going through different interview stages, turning in, doing some sort of testing. Different evolutions of hiring you can put into this pipeline and do it as an internal tool. You can combine that with like membership courses for onboarding your team members as well, and walking them through different kind of like lay of the land courses and trainings and different things like that. So that's just something to note. Sometimes that doesn't surface or isn't obvious when people get into the system. So just like to share that about the pipeline. I think it's nice that you can use it multiple ways. And then you can use it for support too if you're tracking support tickets and things like that. So again, it's not maybe the first use case that Highlevel has in mind, but those are some just, if you have simple processes, sometimes that's just something you can build into the system so you don't have to buy another software and patch together. So there's some other thoughts as well just to share. So again, this is just kind of a conceptual overview of the opportunities pipeline, just sharing thoughts if they have value for you, hopefully. So nothing too deep dive, nothing too training based, but just want to give you some thoughts behind the scenes to help make sure you're more successful doing build outs and creating things for your team or for your clients. So hopefully that helped. And if you're considering Highlevel for the first time or are using it, you want some more insights on maybe the best way to approach stuff, so you're not going back to the drawing board on things or doing course corrections, which is hard on teams and probably impacts adoption rates more than it already is tough for teams to adopt new softwares. Just reach out. I have an affiliate link below. Happy to support you in that journey. And point in the right direction. Make sure it's the right fit for you and your team. And yeah, just reach out anytime if you have any questions. I'm happy to support you.